Welcome back to NY Flight. We are joined by Mr. Paul Boy Green Eston Jr. again. Boy Green, how are you doing today?
Well, I don't know. There's good and bad, I guess, but mostly bad coming off of last night. That was brutal. Primetime game, and for the defense to get embarrassed like that was jarring, to say the least.
I totally agree. I think the positives, though, the offense scored 20 points. I thought we were lucky if we scored 10 points. Jermaine Johnson had a great game with that crazy nice pick six and almost that fumble recovered. But I thought the offense looked good for a very good Browns defense. I know they lost, but I thought the offense looked good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The Browns' defense was spectacular, and right off the bat, obviously, we had the Jets score an opening drive touchdown. The Browns obviously scored a touchdown. All of a sudden, we're like, whoa, are we getting a wild shootout here? We're getting something crazy. So, tip of the cap to Nathaniel Hackett, who's gotten obviously a lot of heat this year, deservedly so. He just called a great opening script, and he's actually struggled in that department. Obviously, the Jets have been a terrible first quarter team, and the fact that I just mentioned that stat, that was the first time that they had an opening drive touchdown this season in week 17 is never ideal, obviously. So from that perspective, that's bad. But the good news is that he just had, again, and it's not a complicated formula. Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson. Yeah, let's get those guys involved. That's a good plan anytime you do one of those. So, yeah, it was incredibly encouraging in a lot of different respects. Yes.
I agree. And now let's go over to the question that Salah answered to about how they thought he should be angrier after that loss, and he said, "Would you like me to break the podium?" What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know this is a viral moment. It's a polarizing comment. Some people are going after Rich Cimini of ESPN, who asked the question, saying it was a bad question. Others are going after Salah, saying, what a weird answer. To me, I thought it was a very fair question, to be honest, because Salah, in his time in San Francisco, he was known for his emotion, his passion on the sideline, how invested he was in the game and on a play-to-play basis. And I think a lot of us knew that when he was hired as a head coach, it wouldn't be to that same level because he has to watch over the entire team. But that was the special ingredient that makes Salah who he is and why he's so relatable from a player perspective and things of that nature. So he has been very removed for a bunch of weeks. I did a show this morning with Tyson from Let's Talk Jets, and he said a lot of the fans were calling him a zombie on the sideline last night. I didn't see some of those comments, but still, to Tyson's point, that people, he just looked removed. He looked, dejected. There was just a lot of words you could use. So I thought it was a very fair question from Rich at the end of the press. Like, whoa, Sal, what's going on here? And if okay, like from the perception, you don't seem very angry. What's going on the inside? Like, let us in. What's going on here? Like, what is the emotion? Like, frustration, whatever. And Salah took it obviously in a different direction. So, yeah, that I thought fair question from Samini and weird response from Salah. It was kind of weird. Want me to break the podium? At first, I thought he was joking, but he didn't smile. And then the press conference ended right there that he walked off. So it was pretty bizarre. Pretty bizarre. Yeah.
I agree. Salah has always been an emotionless coach. I mean, the Jets, same with Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles never cracked a smile when he was the coach of the New York Jets. Thing I didn't like about Salah, though, against the Commanders, 1 minute and something left, Commanders player goes down. The Commanders have to use a timeout. This is basically where the Jets won the game, and they're trying to dial up a great offensive play to get Greg the leg in range, and Salah's just sitting there like this. Not even saying anything in the headset, just sitting there like this. What do we do?
Yeah, it's just weird because again, in his position, he doesn't call defense. That's Jeff Ulbrich. He doesn't call offense. That's Hackett and Todd Downing and everything up there. So he is just this overall CEO, just kind of overseeing the entire operation. So yeah, it is weird because I think if he did let fans in a little bit and showed some of that emotion, not necessarily spiking a podium on the ground, but showing us some there that like, okay, this guy's human. This guy's alive. He's in there, but he's just struggling through an obviously rough season. I mean, he's the one who has to take the bullets every week in these post-game pressers. He speaks multiple times during the week, like Joe Douglas speaks a handful of times during the year, combine, end of season, mid-season. Like, there's only a handful of times where he even gets to speak. So Salah's getting the bullets. I think fans understand that, but I wish he would just let us in a little bit more. I think that would probably help his case.
I agree with you, but here, I've been saying this all along.
Yep.
There's a difference. There's offensive coordinators, there's defensive coordinators, and then there's head coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Salah's a defensive coordinator. He's not a head coach.
Mm.
The head coaches in the league are Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, Kyle Shanahan, and more, who can call both offense and defense. Saleh does not know anything when it comes to running an offense. That's why we need someone smart on this offensive staff.
Yeah, we'll see. The problem is, I don't know if we're going to get that, Connor. I don't know if we're going to get somebody that comes in here and joins Hackett in the room. That could potentially be awkward and create potential rifts. So I think basically it's going to be pretty modus operandi from that standpoint of having the main pieces back. Maybe there's a little bit of splash. Maybe there's some Rodgers guy from the past. I've heard Samini bring up the former offensive line coach that's in Carolina. They had a hard knocks moment with each other. I think it's James Campen. He's a
Yes,
guy
yes.
potentially you could bring in and add to the room potentially. But, besides that, I don't think we're going to get that. I think they're going to live and die by this. Outside of the only thing maybe that changes it is some sort of embarrassment against New England. Maybe that creates some sort of firestorm, but it would have to be very bad, I think, to reach that level.
I agree. I put a poll in the chat. Boy Green, who do you think is going to start against New England?
Yeah. We just heard from Salah moments ago. He was basically asked that question and he kind of danced around it a little bit. The one thing I did note, though, prior in the past when Salah had been asked about Zach Wilson, so when he first became the starter, like he took over as the starting quarterback the most latest time after all the hoopla of Tim Boyle and everything else, he said, God willing, Zach Wilson will be the starting quarterback for the rest of the season. Basically, barring injury, he's the guy. Okay, Zach Wilson's the guy. Here we go. And then, of course, he gets injured in the Dolphins game. He is concussed, can't play in the Washington game. He's concussed, can't play in the Cleveland game. And now we only have this last game left. So he was asked, hey, if Zach Wilson's healthy, is he going to play? He's like, well, we'll see. Like, actually, I tweeted out the quote. We'll see where he's at. He would definitely be a part of the discussion, but we just need to get him healthy first. That's not the same as saying the unequivocally, of course, Zach Wilson's starting. As if he's healthy, he's starting. Boom. He didn't say that. That to me is weird because that's a little bit of a pivot. So I don't anticipate Zach Wilson, quite frankly, whether he's healthy or not, to play in this game. I think it's going to be Simeon. And to be honest, outside of the horrible pick six, where it was just too telegraphed, outside of that, Simeon actually was pretty solid. He ran when he could. He got the ball to Brees Hall, that jersey you're wearing, Garrett Wilson, all these guys. Like, he did his job. Now, Brett Rippon would be fun. I think we talked about it
Yes,
last time
yes.
we spoke. Will Parkinson also has mentioned that in the past. He would be a fun guy. And again, to add an eighth quarterback over the last two seasons playing in games, that would be a fun fact, an interesting future pub trivia night. But I lean towards Simeon at this point.
I agree with you. And Garrett Wilson, I've been making this connection ever since the Boyle, Simeon, Wilson, Tobacco kind of rotation of them.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Wilson reminds me of what Terry McLaurin was earlier in his career.
Hmm.
You could pair him with any quarterback and he's still going to succeed. Terry McLaurin was like Carson Wentz, Kyle Allen, those
Yeah.
guys. They were like, I think he played like 10 different quarterbacks in his first 2 or 3 seasons. That's like crazy. And he's still putting up great numbers. All right, let's get into some questions. Wild Wave said, nah, they're definitely making changes on that offensive side. What do you think, Boy Green?
Well, maybe Salah, when he spoke with Albert Brewer, this is another point we made on a prior video, Connor, is that he
Yes.
said that he fully anticipates his full staff being back. When I spoke with Tyson this morning from Let's Talk Jets on Boy Green Daily, he believes, and I concurred with him, that he was just saying that because what else are you going to say? Hey, is your staff coming back? Of course they are. Like,
I
nah,
agree.
no, they're not. Like, so I think he was just saying that. I think there will be some changes, but I don't think they're major. Like, okay, you get rid of Keith Carter potentially at offensive line and bring in that, like I said, I think it's James Campen, who's the Carolina guy who has the Rodgers connection. Okay, you swap that out. Okay. Calabrese, maybe you move him out and moves him around. But like when we're talking here, Wild Wave, like legitimate changes of like a different offensive mind coming in the room, that ain't happening. That's just not happening. Aaron Rodgers not learning a new offense we're not having everything we just had with all the hype of 2023 and the offense and perfect and blah 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 blah, and then 2024, let's just start from scratch. You're ruining everything that you set out to do. Again, the Hackett offenses look terrible this year. There's no other way to put it. But with Rodgers, the reason I feel confident, first off, Rodgers is going to be the offense coordinator. When he's playing out
Yes.
there, he's going to be calling plays, he's going to be changing things up, he's going to be doing whatever the hell he wants because he's Aaron Rodgers. So I think hopefully that should marginalize a lot of the lack of changes that's going to be coming on offense. Again, maybe you get a couple of swaps, an offensive line coach here, different guy in the room from a quarterback coach, but the main characters are the same. Nathaniel Hackett is running this offense, and Aaron Rodgers, in tandem are running this offense. I feel pretty passionately about that.
I totally agree. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has. Oh, here's another question from Wild
Okay.
Wave.
Yep.
You think Saleh is going to go another year taking these bullets? I expect the minority coaches to get fired and maybe an interim with Hackett.
Ugh, that'd be disgusting. But go another year taking the bullets. Like, here's the thing. Outside of the Jets starting like 1-7 or something, like you can't go all in. You can't be half measured. Is basically my point. If you're going all in, which apparently the Jets, by all accounts, are doing, they are going all in on this season, and they're going to live and die by Aaron Rodgers in 2024. Then you have to see it through. The only way I could see Saleh getting fired midseason, which, by the way, Woody Johnson has never done in his entire ownership here in the 21st century, he has never fired a coach midseason. And if he didn't do it for Adam Gase, why would he do it for Saleh here? That to me just doesn't make sense. It would have to be there's only two ways potentially. The Jets are like 1-10 or something. Like they're eliminated from the playoffs and they're just terrible. Like, okay, number one. Number two, some scandalous nature, something crazy. Their locker room gets lost, and there's all kinds of crazy stories coming out of the locker room. Okay, maybe that happens. Outside of that, though, Saleh will continue to take the bullets because he's getting paid millions of dollars. He's one of 32 NFL head coaches, and that's the nature of the beast. And it's not just the Jets. Every general manager speaks that infrequently, as I just mentioned. Head coaches speak all the time. That's just the nature of the job. So, no, yes, I believe he will continue to take the bullets because there's no other choice. But if it all collapses, everyone will be fired at the end of the year in 2024. If they do not make the playoffs, if they do not make a legitimate run, Douglas is gone, Hackett's gone, Saleh's gone, and then they will try to bring Rodgers in the room, I believe, to try to find the next regime because I believe Rodgers would still want to play after that.
I totally agree with you. I think Rodgers is going to get the most say in whatever happens. If we fire Todd Downing, if we fire Keith Carter, he's going to be the one who makes that decision. It's not going to be the front office. And something he mentioned on the Pat McAfee show that I posted a video about, he said he wanted to stay on injured reserve, but the Jets said, no, we're putting you on the active roster. I find that hard to believe because as much influence the Jets give to him, I'm surprised they didn't say, sure, you could stay on injured reserve. I don't know if that was 100% accurate.
I buy it, actually, because here's how it works. If Aaron Rodgers stayed on IR, he basically practices on a different field where he's been practicing basically this entire time. However, if he's activated to the 53-man roster, he's fully practicing with the team, whether in scout team or however they potentially divide QB1, QB2 reps, which there aren't a lot to go around. So I buy it because, Rodgers, I think Rodgers is a stand-up guy. Now, you can talk to him about all the other aspects of his life that he may or may not agree with out there, and there's plenty of people who would have things to say about that. But purely from like a football and a human to football perspective, like, no, I don't want to come back to practice if Nick Bodden's going to lose his gig. But the Jets overruled him and I'm sure explained to him that, hey, we're going to cut Nick Bodden, but no one's going to claim an injured fullback off of waivers.
Yes,
we're going to bring him back, and he's got 3 elevations, beep, boop, bop. He keeps his money. He's on the team. Everyone's happy, and you get to practice. So I think they did overrule him from that perspective. So that one I take at face value because it helps. I've heard some of the stories, whether it's from NewYorkJets.com or Rogers.McAfee or what have you. When he ran the scout team ahead of the Washington week, he was talking trash to the defense and getting them fired up, and everyone just kind of lightened the mood. It kind of lightened the mood and increased the competitive nature in a season that's lost with mathematical elimination from the playoffs. So I've really liked his inclusion in practice. He's a fabric of this team. It's much different than it was with Brett Favre, where he was basically living in his own private office and doing his 1% thing. It's Brett Favre and that everybody else. Aaron Rodgers has assimilated himself as much as you can as Aaron Rodgers with the rest of the team, and that part's really cool to me.
I agree with you. I think he deserved to be elevated, as no one would have claimed Nick Barden, and we could just elevate him for all 3 games. But let's go over to the draft.
Sure.
After that loss last night, the Jets have the 8th pick according to Tankathon. Who do you think we draft? Who do you like in the draft other than the obvious Olu Fashanu and Joe Alt?
Yeah, before I answer that, I would just say they're temporarily at 8 right now because they're ahead of Chicago, but the Jets have played an extra game than these other teams because
Yes.
obviously the rest of Week 17 has to play out. But there's a chance the Jets can get as high as 5 if the right teams win in front of them, which would be great. They could get to a prime position here to get some of those names you mentioned, Fashanu or Joe Alt or someone of that nature would be in the conversation. So we'll see kind of how it all plays out from that perspective. And then obviously we have the Week 18 NFL and then Week 18 New England Patriots game to determine that. But to answer your question, first off, I'll say just positionally, there are 2 positions. This is the 2020 NFL draft all over again, where the Jets either had to take a wide receiver or an offensive lineman. Those are your only 2 choices, to me, that are available on the board. Now, there's some people that say Brock Bowers at tight end. And again, if you're sitting at 10, 11, 12, I don't know. We'll see where the Jets end up finishing. But if you're sitting somewhere in there and all the positions are tapped out, like the top 3 or 4 offensive tackles are gone, the top 3 or 4 wide receivers are gone, the top couple quarterbacks gone, and you literally have no choice, or you could be first at tight end, you're like, well, okay. We'll take Brock Bowers. So maybe there is a scenario where that exists for me. But for me personally, I'm going offensive line or wide receiver, whoever is the best available. If Joe Alt or Fashanu slips, that'd be phenomenal. Although there are second and third players, the kid out of Georgia, Mims, they have him at offensive line that could make sense. The other wide receiver I want is Neighbors out of LSU because
Yes.
I want to add a dynamic piece to this team. It is so desperately needed. Again, offensive line is paramount. But if those guys aren't there, you can't force a square peg in a round hole. Take one of the 2 options. Option A, door number 1, or door number 2. Those are the 2 choices for the New York Jets heading into this draft. And as long as they open one of those 2 doors, I don't give a flying which door it is. If it's one of those 2 doors, I'm feeling great as a Jets fan because that plugs a massive hole on this roster. If they pick door number 3 and it's something weird like tight end or something, how the hell are you fixing offensive line wide receiver without the benefit of a first-round pick? That's a question they would have to answer in that scenario.
I agree. I think Brock Bowers is not the correct move, as we have Tyler Conklin and Jeremy Rucker, 2 very talented tight ends. So I'd like wide receiver, offensive lineman. All right, we have 2 questions. Shout out Jake Assman for watching the show. When does the pain end? Does it? Will it? Honestly, Jake, I don't think the pain as a Jets fan will ever end.
I actually, like I said, my daughter turns 2 in January, and she watches this movie over and over again on Netflix, the Super Mario Brothers movies.
Yes.
And there is this star character in the show, or the movie rather, and it's a super depressing character. And one of the things is that she or he, I don't know the gender, but whoever it is of the star says in the movie all the time that they can't wait for the sweet release of death. That's when the pain ends. And I always laugh like, Jesus, how dark. But I guess the pain ends when we're dead, Jake, and maybe we'll be haunted in the afterlife by ghosts and other things of that nature, as my daughter heard me mention that over there in the other room. But no, the pain doesn't end. But I will reiterate with this, as the guy who claims to be the most optimistic Jets fan in the world, is that I reiterate this. It's going to so be worth it because I know the Jets will eventually win. They're going to, when I'm alive, they will win the Super Bowl. And I think it's happening here with Aaron Rodgers. And when it does, we're going to look back at these times of all the horrible decisions, injuries, and all the lows that have happened. It's going to be worth it because the berry is going to be worth it. The juice will be worth the squeeze by the time we get there. And the trials and tribulations will make the euphoria that much sweeter when the Jets do win, when they do overcome these obstacles. Again, it's painful. It's brutal. We're in the middle of a 13-year playoff drought. That has never happened in Jets history. We're dating back to 1960, people. We're dating back to the New York Titans. There has never been this level of ineptitude where they have missed the playoffs in 13 consecutive years in this franchise's history. So all the old school Jet fans will go, oh, back in my day, we had one of these. No, sir. No, you didn't. Not this current run. So it's painful, but like I said, the good news is that there is a plan, whether or not people believe in it in varying levels. You have Aaron Rodgers. That is the light at the end of the tunnel for me to emerge out of the darkness.
I feel like in a couple of years or maybe next year when the Jets are making a Super Bowl run, we're gonna look back and be like, remember this season when we signed Aaron Rodgers in free agency and he tore his Achilles 4 plays into the season and we finished 6-7-10 or 6-11 or whatever we finish. All
Yeah,
right,
brutal.
Wild Wave. We have to come away with Alt Olu, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, or Brock Bowers. I don't want Brock Bowers, but if we come away with Alt Olu, I don't think we'll be low enough to get Marvin Harrison or Neighbors. Personally, I just want Alt or Olu, but if they're both not available, either trade back or get Neighbors. Those are the guys I like. What about you, Boy Green?
Well, the good news is all the names Wild Wave mentions here are some of those blue chipper players I'm talking about. Now, maybe Neighbors is a little outside of that, but for the most part, the other ones are all like players I would love to run to the podium to get. Alter, Fashanu are phenomenal. They'd be plug and play offense linemen for a team that is chasing a chip. Marvin Harrison Jr. I live here locally in New York, where I've covered Syracuse football since moving up here in 2008. His father, Marvin Harrison, played for Syracuse in the
Yes.
90s. He's a Pro Football Hall of Famer, and his son is even bigger than he is. So he's obviously been eating his Wheaties. He's like a 6'4", 200 pounds. His dad was like 6 flat, 185 maybe. So like his son is even larger man, and he's fantastic as a receiver. So if the Jets could reunite two former Ohio State products and Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson, I would be thrilled. I would be over the moon if we could do that. Neighbors to me is really exciting. Again, I'm not sure he's in the same class as everybody else, but he'd be a super exciting player. And then, like I said about the Bowers thing, I like Tyler Conklin a lot. I've had him on my show. I love Tyler Conklin. Jeremy Ruckert, I think is a cool story. The Long Island, the Jets, and all that stuff. All that's really interesting, but he hasn't really delivered so far. There's been a couple of pops, couple of flashes. I think he could be a solid tight end two in this league, and there's nothing wrong with that as a third round pick. Man, a solid tight end two that could be here for a decade. Sure, that's fine. But Bowers is a difference maker. He is spectacular. So, and of course, you pair that with Aaron Rodgers, and maybe he can unlock other parts of him that a normal Jets quarterback couldn't. So, again, I prefer offensive line or wide receiver for all the reasons I've mentioned. But if you are in the pinpoint position where it's you take Bowers, who would be the first tight end off the board, or you take like the fifth offensive lineman or like the sixth receiver, or however it would work in the shuffling, then you think to yourself, what's value here? The Jets have prided themselves, Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, on BPA, best player available. And there is a world where Bowers is the best player available on the board, which would test that theory.
Personally, if Bowers is the best player available, I'd rather trade back and get a
Sure,
couple of
yeah, that's a
picks
good
and
option.
get a alignment like maybe Fuega falls to in the 20s or late teens. Speaking of draft, let's pull up the Joe. Wait, Wild Wave has a question. Then
Oh,
we will
sure,
pull
yeah.
up the Joe Douglas draft chart, courtesy of
Okay.
Joe Caparoso. I wouldn't mind trading the 2015 first to move up. The draft, I think you meant 2025.
Oh, okay. I was like, what? Yeah, I'd love to trade former first round picks of the past who didn't work out, but okay, yeah.
The draft is a crapshoot, right? Might as well use your assets to move up. I I I'd be lying if I said I agree with that, but I agree with you when it comes to the draft being a crapshoot. They're all lottery tickets. You have no idea what they're going to end up like. So I agree with you on that, but I would not trade our 2025 first to move up. We're lucky we have this first. Imagine if we didn't make this first a conditional and we just gave the Packers this first, the Jets fan base would riot.
Again, I think that is something that I think we're missing a lot here is that the Jets weren't supposed to have this pick. I'm going to be honest. When the Jets made their Aaron Rodgers trade, I already kissed this first round pick and said, goodbye, float, little bird. Like, I wasn't expecting to have this 2024 first round pick that the Jets have. I completely signed it off. I said, of course, Aaron Rodgers playing over 65% of snaps. Sign here, sniff here, scratch here, Packers, you could have it. So it's a blessing, really, that the Jets even have this pick because they weren't supposed to have this selection. So that part of it, I hope Jet fans really cherish because they shouldn't even be in this position right now. Now, in terms of, again, if we could give up a 2015 first, yes, I would do that. A 2025 first, absolutely not. You have to think about the present and future at the same time. That's Joe Douglas's job. Now, maybe Joe Douglas, if he's really feeling the heat, he's like, well, I might not even be here to use that 2025 first, so sure, let's slap it in. I think that would be more so a red flag of like, whoa, all right, Joe Douglas really thinks he's gone because he's a guy who values draft picks. And think about this. What if we have another year? And God, I hope not, obviously. But for the sake of this question, what if Aaron Rodgers gets hurt again and you have another horrible season? And let's say it's a top 5 pick. That top 5 pick goes to whoever you're trading up for. God, no. Now, here's something I'm potentially willing to do. I know a lot of Jet fans won't. And I know, Connor, how you already feel about this. But if you give up a 2025 conditional, let's call it a second or a third that could move up, for Devontae Adams, and depending on like incentives and things, that's maybe somewhere I could go. But a straight up 2025 first, I don't even think I'm willing to do that for Adams because he's 31 and all of the other factors that are included. I'm not willing to give up a top 10 pick, which is what the Jets have right now. Absolutely not. Totally off the table. And obviously, you have no second round pick to give up. So then we're dealing with other things here where it can get crazy. But that's maybe where I'm willing to move up. Move up in the draft? No, that I'm sure another team would if the Jets called up whoever the Bears, let's say, who have the third or fifth overall pick, wherever they would stand, not the Bears, whoever, it doesn't matter, New England, Arizona, whatever, and they said, hey, we'll give you a 2025 first round pick. They're like, okay, yep, it's all yours. Whoop, take it. And sure, Joel or Frashana would be great, but you'd be sacrificing your immediate future, which I think would be too aggressive. The Jets should be aggressive this offseason. That's too aggressive.
I agree. I don't want Devontae Adams. I made my point clear. Old receiver. Give me T. Higgins and I'll be happy. Wild Wave comes back in again. You notice that Quincy's contract is lining up with our Cord 4's contract. Who are you going to pay? Michael Carter, the second contract ends next year too. Decisions. Who do you think?
Because Quincy signed a 3-year deal for 18 mil. That first year was this year. Then you have 2 years after that. So it's 2024, 2025. Free agent in 2026. Garrett is 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 fifth-year option. Yeah, it kind of lines up with some of those. So who are we going to pay? Well, I think you're paying all the main guys. Like, this was the sacrifice you made with the strategy of having 3 first-round picks in a single year and nearly 4 with Breece Hall, is
Yes.
that all of them line up at the same time. So while that can be scary because if they work out, that's a lot of money. And so far they are. Garrett looks spectacular. Sauce looks spectacular. Jermaine looked like a freak last night. He should have had 2 defensive touchdowns last night. And Breece has been special too. So they're all playing out the way that you all hope your draft picks play out. But now you have to pay the piper. But if you plan accordingly, it's not impossible to line up everybody to sign appropriately. So while it all lines up, and Michael Carter II, these are first world problems that you want to have too many guys to pay, and you have to dice them up. Again, for the Jets, it's going to be all on structure, front loading deals, back loading deals, fitting it into the cap, and pushing stuff into the future, which they'll be able to do. So I know you can't pay everyone ultimately at the end of the day, but all 4 of those core 4, as we were talking about, again, there's a top 4 draft picks of the 2022 class. All of them are getting the bag from me. I'll make Sauce one of the highest paid corners. Garrett will be in the conversation among the highest paid receivers. Jermaine Johnson is a little bit interesting with his statistics. I don't know how that conversation will go. And then Breece had the injury, so he may be another difficult one as running back contracts are difficult to deal with. But yeah, I'm finding a way to pay them all. It's hard to pick right now, not knowing some of these futures and things that are going to happen. But hopefully the Jets can find a way to lock them all down because Michael Carter II is an underrated piece. And Aaron Rodgers said it last night on Quincy. He's having the quietest all-pro campaign that we've seen. Hopefully, this is Aaron Rodgers speaking, around award time he gets his love because he deserves it. Quincy Williams has been spectacular.
I agree. I think Quincy's been incredible this season, but then going over to Breece when it comes to paying Breece, I can't name 5 running backs right now I'd rather have than Breece Hall.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey's on the list.
Yes.
Boy, that's probably it, to be honest with you. And maybe that sounds crazy, but and as a former running back, I love running backs. That's one of my favorite positions in football. Yeah, Christian's probably the only one.
Maybe Raheem Mostert, possibly Raheem Mostert.
Nah, I probably wouldn't go that far. Again, the speed is enticing, and he's having an awesome season this year. There's no doubt about it. It's historical, but no, the age and injury history, I wouldn't take him. But yeah, I mean, let me see. Highest paid running backs in football. Because, like, some people would say Derrick Henry, but he's getting up there in age. Let's see. Yeah, let me just go to highest paid running backs. Let me do a quick Google search. Okay, here we go. All right, here we go. All right, here, over the cap. Okay, so we got Christian McCaffrey. I'd take Christian McCaffrey over Brees Hall. Alvin Kamara,
Yes.
nope.
Not at all.
Jonathan Taylor,
No.
no. Derrick Henry, no. Nick Chubb, the injury, no. And then we just start going down a rabbit hole here. No. Yeah, Christian McCaffrey is the only running back I would take. Looking at the full list in front of me, he is the only running back that I would take over Brees Hall based on all the information I have right now. That's how special of a player Brees Hall is.
I agree. So Wild Wave has one more question, then we will pull up
Okay,
the Joe Douglas draft chart.
sure.
So what are you guys doing with Huff? Me personally, I'm trading him for assets, especially since we drafted.
McDonald. I love the
Oh yeah,
emojis. Very
McDonald.
nice. Very nice.
Um, honestly, I don't know what to do with Huff at all. Maybe a tag and trade, or
Definitely possible. That's the only way you could trade him right now is with the tag and trade.
I know we have so many free agents coming up. I want to sign Solomon Thomas. I think most of the D line returns. I don't know if Bryce Huff returns though. And Carl Lawson. Carl Lawson's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. Yeah, he's gone. It's such a difficult conversation because I love Huff. I've also had him on my show and I've talked to him. He's a really good dude. He deserved to get paid. He's arguably one of the best pass rushers on this unit. But you did draft, as the emojis say, Will McDonald, and you want him to take, hopefully in theory, a Jermaine Johnson leap. And the only way he could do that is with reps. And if you bring back Bryce Huff, that makes that more difficult, certainly. Oh boy, I'd like to. Okay, well, it's a question to a question. Wild Wave can't answer this. This is just more rhetorical. Like, what can you get for Bryce Huff? So he had a second round restricted free agent tender this past year. No one bit. I believe after this season, again, a career high. He's got 8 sacks. I don't think he had one last night, unless I missed it. So he had 8 sacks. He has 8 sacks, excuse me, and then one game to go against the Patriots. And I think he'll do some work against them. Might get to double digits. Boy, I'd like to know what the tag and trade package looks like. I imagine the Jets could maybe get a late first and some change. And if they can do that, that may be compelling for the Jets to try to do something with. But also at the same time, you're trying to win now. And Bryce Huff is a win now player. So if you could sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal, we'll see. Maybe Bryce Huff would want something longer, and I would want something longer if I was Bryce Huff. But if he would be willing to do a 2 or 3 year deal and let's figure it out later, let's bring him back, that'd be compelling to do. I'd have to see the trade package, though. How I'm sure a ton of teams would be interested, and rightfully so. Probably some of those contenders. That's what I'm talking about. Like let's say Baltimore wins the Super Bowl, they have 32 pick, or trying to think. The 49ers obviously would fall head over heels for Huff, but any one of those kind of
Bills?
teams. Say that again.
Maybe the Bills, but I don't know if
Oh,
he'd
screw
stay
that.
in the
There's
division.
no way in hell. There's not a price the Bills can pay. I don't care. They could say 1,000 first round picks. I'll be like, go kick rocks, pal. I'm not being haunted for the rest of my life for that Bryce Huff choice. But again, the point is that one of those contenders with a late first round pick, I could totally see offering some sort of package to get Bryce Huff with his age, the analytics, what he's been able to produce. But that would be hard. That'd be a hard thing for Joe Douglas, who that's one of his gems that I don't think he gets enough credit for.
Undrafted free agent.
Exactly. And to find him, develop him, nurture him to what he's become, I'm sure those are the kind of guys you want to pay. Those are the homegrown stories you like to tell at the dinner table for Thanksgiving. So that one will be tough. God, that's going to be a big debate point all season long. So I could see both ways, but I'd like to see the trade package. If it's a first round pick combination package, I'm intrigued. If it's not, I don't think that's enough to tickle me. Although, again, to recoup potentially the second round pick that you lost in Aaron Rodgers trade, plus some change, might be tempting for the Jets as well.
I think if they offer a first for Huff, we have to take it. If they offer a first for Bryce Huff, we are accepting that deal all day. And now, speaking of Joe Douglas' hidden gem, let's look at Joe Douglas's draft chart. courtesy
Mm,
of Joe Caparoso, who and Joe Douglas started with the Jets. His first draft class was 2020. All right, so
correct. Yep.
it's up. Okay.
Wow.
So the people in green are the players in green are starters. The
Okay.
yellow is backup and hurt, and then the like red pink kinda is not on active roster, and then the blue is not on Jets roster. Okay, so Makai Becton starter. He shouldn't be a starter, but he is a starter on this team. Denzel Mims out of Baylor. I was a really big fan of that pick at the time. We just couldn't find a way to get him involved in the offense, and he's a free agent right now.
Hmm.
Ashton Davis with our third round pick. He's a backup. I love Ashton. I think we extend him. I'd call that a win in the third round. Jabari Zuniga, kind of in like an offensive lineman who we just chose and didn't really think. And then James Morgan, I don't know if he might have taken like 3 preseason snaps for the Jets, and then I never saw him again.
Yeah.
Um, LaMichael Pirine was an okay running back for the Jets. I wouldn't say he was. He played one. He had a couple touchdowns one year. I thought he was decent, not probably equal to an undrafted free agent. Miss on the pick though. Cameron Clark, I give Joe Douglas a pass. He had a career-ending injury.
Just a quick update. P. Ryan is on a roster. He's on the Kansas City Chiefs roster. He was just on their game the other weekend. So he's the only one that deserves a little update there. He is on the Chiefs roster. I just double
Yeah,
checked that.
this was posted I think a couple weeks ago from Joe
Okay. Yeah, but
Caparoso.
just give a shout out to
Yeah.
P. Ryan still fighting it out there, although that was a terrible pick. Yeah.
Cameron Clark, I give him a pass. Season-ending injury. Bryce Hall, fifth round pick. He played a huge role in that Eagles win, and
Yes.
he had that touchdown against the
Broncos.
Broncos from the Quincy forced fumble. I'd say he was a solid fifth round pick, and then Braden Mann was just terrible. The Lions game, that low liner, we finally got rid of him.
Yeah.
He gave up that kick return touchdown against the Lions, and he's also the reason we don't have Trevor Lawrence, ladies and gentlemen. And
It's
then
true.
then we go over to the 2021 class. All right, the only way to put it, Zach Wilson's a bust. There's one way to put it and one way only. Zach Wilson is a bust.
Mhm.
So miss on a second overall pick. But if you look at the quarterbacks in that class, Trevor Lawrence has been doing fine. But other than Trevor Lawrence, who the Jets didn't have a chance to pick, that whole quarterback class was terrible.
Yeah.
Justin Fields, Mac Jones, everyone thought it was one of the best quarterback classes at the time. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Vera Tucker, fully healthy. I think he's not an all possibly an all pro player if he can stay healthy. I think they move him to tackle eventually. I don't want them to, but I think they might eventually. Elijah Moore, he scored a touchdown last night. He just could
He
not
did.
fit into the Jets system. Him and Denzel Mims both could not find their way. There was a point last year where he went like 3 games without a target and he was playing like 50% of the snaps. Zach just didn't throw him the football last season. He
Mm-mm.
requested a trade and then he got out of New York and went to Cleveland. Michael Carter. See, I've always been a big fan of Michael Carter. He was a good running back, and then Brees just came in, and Brees was exploded, and then he tore his ACL, and Michael Carter was serviceable. I wouldn't say great. He was serviceable. He was an okay third down back, but my whole thing, I didn't want him or Cook playing because like I've always wanted Izzy to play, and they just started giving Izzy touches, and he, other than that kickoff last night, which I have no idea why he was taking. I think Salah mentioned it in the press conference today. He
They
wanted,
wanted to mix it up basically because
yeah,
Xavier Gibson is obviously the normal returner for the Jets, but obviously he got an uptick in wide receiver snaps. Alan Lazard was out with an illness last
yes,
night, so ton of reps for Xavier. So they wanted to give the kick return reps to somebody else. Izzy, they said, was super explosive, so they gave it to him, and he ended up fumbling it in the first quarter, which was brutal.
and then they put Xavier Gibson back in there, and then we take the ball at the 40-yard line.
Yeah, yeah, spectacular.
So, and then I think that's a typo. Jamian Sherwood.
Yeah,
He's been solid. He's been okay.
a good reserve linebacker. Yeah,
Yeah, for a fifth round pick, I think I mean, I don't know who we would have taken instead of him, but I thought that an okay pick. Michael Carter the second,
correct.
incredible pick. Best nickel corner in the league,
Mm-hmm.
has had an incredible year. Jason Pinnock, he was okay. I think the Jets made a mistake giving him up, and now he's playing solid with the Giants.
Yeah, it's a starter with the Giants. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know that's a linebacker. I'm not gonna even try to pronounce his name because I know I'm gonna get
Yeah,
it
it's
wrong.
Hamza Nasirlardine.
Yes, I remember him. He was number 45 linebacker. He
That's
never
right.
really he never really played that much.
A good dart throw, though. He was an athletic freak out of Florida State. Had a lot of talent, but it just didn't work out.
Gave him some preseason snaps. Fine. 6th round pick. Fine.
Yeah.
Brendan Eccles has been solid for a 6th round pick.
Oh, a great value. Yeah,
The
another misspelling here. Come on, man. Let's spell Brandon Eccles' name right. Brandon with an I, baby. Come on, man.
Joe
Yeah, come
Caporoso.
on, Joe.
Brendan Eccles. He had the great fake punt against the Bills, and he's just been a solid cornerback.
He's had a couple of pick sixes too, right? He
Yes,
had the two pick sixes on Tua.
yes, I do remember that. And then Jonathan Marshall. I think last time I checked, the Jets released him last year, and he signed with the Steelers. I don't know what happened in that tenure, but he for a 6th round pick, it's fine. What I'm more focused on is the higher guys, and then 2022 draft class. Obviously, everyone in this class is incredible except Max Mitchell. I'm not a fan of Max Mitchell. I think he had a promising start to last season when he came back from that injury, but he just has done nothing this year. I think Michael Clemens has the potential to be good. He's a huge guy. And then I think Jeremy Ruckert is going to be a good tight end too for this team. And then obviously those four, just incredible.
Yeah, Marshall, by the way, is still on Pittsburgh, so shout out to him. He has stayed on Pittsburgh this entire time, so
Oh,
shout out to
wow.
Marshall. Yes,
It
sir.
says he's not on an active roster. He might be on the practice squad then.
Yeah, yeah. It looks like he is on that practice squad. So there you go.
And then we go over to this year's draft class.
Yeah, boy.
Will McDonald was a panic pick. The Pats traded their pick to the Steelers. The Jets
Yep.
were like, "Oh, we have Broderick Jones, blah blah blah. We're gonna get him." That was a panic pick by the Jets. They thought Broderick Jones would be there, and the Steelers took Broderick Jones, and the Jets were like, "Oh crap! Now we just got 5 minutes to find someone." I bet you they did no research on Will McDonald before this draft, and
Good lord. Yeah.
they kind of just took him. I would have been all for trading that pick to get maybe another 2nd rounder and draft another offensive lineman. But Joe Tippmann was a great pick, starting center. He's looked very good. Carter Warren could be our swing tackle next year.
Mm-hmm.
He's looked
Mhm.
good. Other than the muffed kickoff, Izzy Abandaconda has looked very solid in the touches they've given him.
Yeah, few and far between.
Zaire Barnes, I don't really care about. Our defense is stacked. Same with Jarek Bernard Converse. And when we come to Zach Kuntz, well, I don't understand why they kept playing Kenny Yeboah last night. He missed several blocks. Like, let Zach Kuntz play. I don't understand why they kept throwing Kenny Yeboah out there.
Yeah, probably more so for blocking and special teams. They've been a fan of his for a long time. He's been on the team for a couple of years. But yeah, I would have loved to see Zach Kuntz get some opportunities, especially in a game like, where you're down your normal personnel with Ruckert out, like use him as a quasi additional receiver, especially with Lazard, who is out with an illness. That's basically what he can provide you at his ridiculous size of like 6'7", 6'8". So it would have been nice to give him some ops, to be honest. So I would have loved to see that. We did not. So that's a little disappointing. But a 7th-round dart throw, that's fine. I love JBC. Jarek Bernard Converse was a player I fell in love with in the draft process, but obviously he's been hurt all year, so we haven't really gotten to see a lot out of him, unfortunately. So there's been some stuff there. And then Zaire Barnes has been really inconsequential as far as that's concerned. But hopefully we see some of those top 4 pick guys. And Will McDonald, who is expected to get a better role. Tippmann's been the starting center for several weeks. Warren's been starting at right tackle, which has been nice. And then Izzy got some pops. A bad fumble last night, but overall, he does have a little bit of juice.
So I agree with you guys that this is Joe Douglas's all-time draft class. Boy Green, any final thoughts?
Again, I love Ashton Davis. He's a guy I loved in the pre-draft process, and I got a lot of crap from Jet fans for all my Ashton Davis love, both pre-draft, during draft, post-draft. But now my Ashton Davis stock is looking better than ever. So suck it, Jet fans. That gave me all that crap over the years. I knew that was a pick that would eventually bloom. So he's spectacular. So shout out to Ashton. I really hope they re-sign him. He's just always around the football. That's great tape. That's great tape study. I hope ABT could stay healthy. because, of course, the Jamal Adams trade gave us Elijah Vera Tucker and Garrett Wilson. So I would love to see AVT healthy. I want to keep him at guard personally, but I understand if they don't because they're losing both starting tackles this offseason. So it's easier to replace guards than tackles. So I would totally understand if they went in that direction. So AVT, I'm just praying for health. There's just no doubt about it. Again, the green four right there in 2022. This may be one of the greatest draft classes of all time. I
Yes.
mean, Sauce is an All-Pro, and I think he'll be an All-Pro again. Garrett Wilson is the first Jets receiver to ever start their career with back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
Jermaine Johnson is really coming into his own this year. That was a wild, athletic interception last night. And again, he should have also had the fumble touchdown. And Breece Hall, after that lull, I just wrote an article about it for Heavy on Jets earlier this morning. He had a 9-game lull in the middle of the season, inexplicably, from like week 16 through week 15. And in that run, Brees Hall averaged 2.5 yards per carry. It was abysmal, disgusting. The last 2 weeks, he's in that 5.2 plus territory. He's just found it, whatever it is. He's both running the football well, catching the ball out of the backfield. He's really great. And Michael Clemens is one of my favorites. I know Jet fans are very hit and miss on him, but he's a good buddy of mine. I love Michael. I got a chance to meet him at the Hall of Fame game, and I really hope he gets more ops on the defensive line rotation. He's a unique personality.
Boy Green, thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you soon again. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.